Hey, Ben Stokes has not been selected for the third test against India, and this is no surprise with his trial still ongoing. Um, this whole thing has been a black cloud hanging over the England setup for 11 months. I personally think that he shouldn't have been around the England setup at all, and he should have been fighting to clear his name, and that should have been his priority. Um, the ECB and the selectors seem to think different. They've allowed to keep him around various one-day T20 and Test squads since the incident. There are the permutations of what could happen if he's found guilty are serious, and we can discuss that after the trial is done. Even if he's found not guilty, what do the ECB and the England setup do? Does he play for England again? That's another key thing, because what's coming out of the trial doesn't look good. You just have to look at the various articles that have been published, and they have to be 100% truthful when it comes to a court reporting, when it comes to the press. Because otherwise the journalists and the publications they work for, or the website or the news station, can be held in contempt of court, which is again a criminal offence. And that journalist can actually be put on trial and be put in prison themselves. So yeah, they tend to report this one pretty accurately when it comes to criminal things. It's one of the few things the press actually report accurately is the results of matches and court reports. Yeah, when it comes to other news, it's normally 70% garbage. But when it comes to legal stuff and sports results, they're generally the only things that are actually frigging truthful. I know. So yeah, do the ECB say you can't represent England for a year? Let's say they say, right, you cannot play for England for a period of time. Because look at the Australians with the ball tampering. They were like, right, Smith, Warner, you can't play for a year. Bancroft, you can't play for 9 months. And that was just for cheating. That's just for like roughing up a ball with a bit of sandpaper. Ben Stokes knocked 2 guys out cold in the street. One of them he left with a broken eye socket. I think it's a little bit more serious. Because, he firstly, on a selection point of view, Curran and Wokes, the 2 other fast-paced all-rounders, are playing rather well at the moment. So, on a selection standpoint, he's got to compete with 2 guys that are in form, that are full of confidence, and are playing very well and are winning test matches for England. Yes, Stokes did bowl very well in India's second innings and did get 4 key wickets, but without Sam Curran's 60-odd for England in the first test, and without Chris Wokes' century and some of his good bowling figures, yeah, that doesn't necessarily happen. It's not with that. If you take those 2 players out, it's not a 2-0 series. It may be a 1-0 series or drawn at this point. It might be 1-1. So he's got to compete with two other players. One of whom is exceptionally young and is full of youthful exuberance, Sam Curran, and Chris Wokes has got a point to prove, and he's proving it very, very well. Also, a code of conduct. That's got to be something that comes out of it, and an internal review into why this has happened, because clearly there's a more stricter curfew now than there was 11 months ago. But it should have happened in the first place. There is a culture issue within cricket. I have discussed does cricket have an issue with drink? As soon as it had happened, and then in the aftermath, does cricket have an issue with drink, or even non-pharmaceutical drug misuse? Yes, we're talking about cannabis, cocaine, speed, etc. There have been players in the past that also have an issue with this and have been accused of smoking cannabis or taking cocaine. That happens around most sports, but there have been those allegations made against players. But yeah, Ben Stokes has put the ECB and the England coaching setup and selectors in a real tricky situation here, because regardless of the outcome of his trial, they're gonna have to basically go, right, he's got a centralised contract for one, and that's a lot of money, so that's an issue. His sponsor, New Balance, has pulled out of their sponsorship agreement, so his ex-sponsor have said, no, we're not sponsoring you anymore. We're terminating our sponsorship agreement. So his sponsor have acted very, very quickly. The ECB, he's on centralised contracts. That's a thing to wonder. But going forward, England look very, very good without him. They played very well in the second test, and yes, the weather conditions were very, very testing, but all four seam bowlers, Curran, Wokes, Broad and Anderson, adapted the conditions very well. I think Broad was possibly the weaker of the bowlers, the weakest, but even he got some good numbers in the second innings and got wickets. So really, I wouldn't fix what's not broken. I really wouldn't. I think the way they played in that second test match, in very testing conditions with a lot of rain delays and a lot of light delays and delays to play, and keeping their focus and also adapting very well to conditions, why suddenly change that? Because the conditions are going to continue to be the same for the next couple of weeks, next week or so. Weather's going to be very, very similar. It may get warmer towards the end of the test series, at which point that's a different question entirely. And if Ben Stokes is available to be selected, that is another conundrum. But the ECB, if they don't seem to reprimand Ben Stokes for like his antics in some way, that's a cop out by the ECB and the selectors and the coaching setup. But Bayliss, Trevor Bayliss, the coach, he's been under a lot of intense scrutiny for most of the last 18 months to 2 years anyway. And this is part of that scrutiny, is how the England setup is dealing with the Ben Stokes situation. And I think they haven't dealt with it the right way. I think having him around test squads and one-day squads and T20 squads and actually him playing whilst under this legal cloud hasn't helped. Because, he's got, I think, in my eyes, you've got to fight to clear your name first and worry about your sports career second, because it's a privilege, not a right. It's an honourable thing. It's a great honour to play for your country, and it's a privilege to play for your country. It's not a right. It really isn't, and it's a bad image for kids. It's a bad role model for kids, saying it's rewarding bad behaviour basically, because fighting is not right. It's wrong, and so many young kids are ending up in street gangs, and sport is a way to get them out of trouble. And having that kind of image, because it's on the internet, there is no escaping it. You can find it very easily on YouTube. You can find it very easily on other videos sharing sites, and you can find it on Twitter. You can find it on Facebook, and you can find it on other social media sharing platforms. Even some of the really obscure ones, you can find it. Kids and young people are exposed more to social media than older people. They really utilise social media better than their parents. And that image and that video footage went mad in the first day or so it was on the internet. Hundreds of thousands of people viewed it. It's not a good image to have. And cricket is struggling to attract young fans compared to other sports like rugby, ice hockey, football obviously. But young kids who may be fans of cricket will see players like Ben Stokes and how they play on the field, and they're role models. And so this is also a tricky one as a role model. What happens? But his career is in jeopardy. That's my personal opinion. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. It's gone on a little bit longer than I wanted, but we got there in the end. Will Ben Stokes play for England again? That's one question. And what do the ECB do, depending on the sentencing, guilty or not guilty? Do they terminate his contract? I would expect them to do that if he's found guilty, but if he's found not guilty, what do the ECB do about his centralised contract? What do they do about selection policy? Do they say you cannot play for England for a period of time as disciplining him? What do they do? There's various permutations. It's a very complex issue, but this should be a culture change for cricket. I think cricket itself needs a culture change. It needs to really evaluate its core values. And yeah, he is a role model for young kids, because kids around the world will, have watched him in the IPL, watched him play around the world, be it in South Africa, be it New Zealand, Australia. They will tune in, especially in those cricket mad countries where they do get to watch, Test cricket. India, cricket mad country. They're playing a Test series against England right now. He played the first Test. You've got 1 billion people in India, of which I would say about half are cricket fans, because hockey is the most popular sport. But cricket, about, I would say, 500 to 600 million people probably follow the Indian Test side, and see Ben Stokes take 4 wickets and basically help England win the Test match against Edgbaston. Yeah, kids are going to watch that around the world and be inspired to take up a bat and ball because of it. But then at the same time, you look at what he's got and done. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. place the thoughts below, and I'll have some more videos for you soon.